Bien, ¿cómo están? Bienvenidos a todos ya quienes se están conectando a esta nueva entrevista de este ciclo de conversaciones que estamos realizando con la Red Coinserta. Hoy estamos con un invitado especial. Él es de la Universidad de Belfast, de Irlanda del Norte, y está hoy acá con nosotros desde Irlanda acompañándonos. So we have today a special guest from Queen's University, Belfast, Northern Ireland, Mr. and Professor Chet Maruna. Thank you very much for being with us today, Mr. Chet.
My pleasure.
So why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about yourself academically and vocationally, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, I started my career as a developmental psychologist, and I was interested in particular in the transition from youth into adulthood among working class and disadvantaged males. And that led me to do a study of something called desistance from crime, which is the movement away from criminal behavior for those who are involved in crime. And that sort of set me off on a career trajectory, becoming a criminologist, which I had never studied to be, but I've been a criminologist now for the last 25 years or so. And most of my research looks now at applied issues of how we can take that research on desistance from crime and help to improve our justice systems in the sense less about rehabilitating people who don't want to change their lives, but rather helping support those who do want to change their lives on that road to desistance and helping them reintegrate into wider society.
So was there any sort of like set of experience that you had, or someone that you met, or I don't know, some event in your life that made you decide to study criminology, or what? Can you tell?
Yeah.
Tell
Yeah,
us?
great question. I mean, especially as someone who studies life stories like I do, it makes sense to want to know, what was that turning point? Who did I meet to set me off on this journey? Almost too many people, really. I did have some life experience. I worked at a halfway house for a little time when I was still new in the world of work, so I didn't have many qualifications, and this was one of the jobs that I could get. And I found in that work, working with ex-prisoners, the individuals I was working with had fascinating stories that needed to be told. So that might have been one of the things that planted a seed for me. But it was really doing the work. I knew I was interested in the stories of the margins. I was interested in young males like myself and making that transition away from delinquency into more richer, fuller lives. And along that journey, I've had the opportunity to meet literally hundreds of just some of the most inspirational, interesting people you could want to meet, and they keep me going on this path. I oftentimes think, I must be fairly narrow to be studying the same thing 30 years later that I started studying back in the 1990s. But it's such a rich and rewarding area of study. With so much of our criminology can be so negative, this is a very positive subject matter, and it's kept me going.
So in fact, I was finding some information about you on internet. So I came across a film made by you and other researchers
Sure.
and call it The Road from Crime. So can
Right.
you tell us a little bit about this film and how did you make? This is starring by a Scottish guy who is an ex-offender, So tell us about
Absolutely.
this film.
Sure, yeah. So the film came about at a kind of a peak of interest in our research. So a number of us, including the other filmmakers for the project, who I should credit, Fergus McNeil, who you'll speak to, Stephen Farrell, and Claire Lightower, and myself. We're a part of a kind of wave of research on desistance. None of us knew each other when we started the research, but we all got to know each other along the way. In the late 90s and early 2000s, and about 10 years into that work, we were getting so many invitations to come give a talk about desistance, come give a talk about desistance to so many different groups that we just couldn't keep up with the invitations. So the film, the idea was it would be a sort of substitute for us having to give presentations. We could just link people to the film, and they could use that for free for training purposes, for introducing staff or public groups. We've had church groups use the film. We've had lots and lots of student groups, obviously, and so forth. But the film became more than just a lecture set to a camera. You know, it really took on a life of its own. We went on a journey in making the film, ended up, it was almost like it was another research project on its own, as we ended up learning about desistance, this thing that we thought we were just going to do a one-way, here we're going to teach people about desistance. We actually found in the experience of the filmmaking that we learned some new things ourselves. And so it was great. The host you mentioned was a fellow named Alan, who was an incredible find. Alan had written a book about his story called You Think You Know Me, or So You Think You Know Me. And we knew on reading that book that this guy was a natural, but we didn't know how good he would be on camera. He really does bring that film to life. We get to meet his members of his family. We take Alan on a journey that leads him all the way to Washington, D.C. in the United States and back again. As he meets a lot of desisters and learns about that process.
Yeah, so what can we learn from those former prisoners who have successfully desisted from criminal behavior? So there are a very good example in this film, you know?
Yeah, some great examples in film. Yeah, you know, I would almost turn that question back and say, what can't we learn? You know, they are the best resource we've got for learning about desistance, obviously about desistance, but even about justice and rehabilitation. You know, we had for a number of years, decades really, have had the idea that we could rehabilitate prisoners, that we have some sort of expert knowledge that we could make people go straight, and they would go straight in the way we wanted them to do so, and for the reasons we wanted them to do so, and it never made much sense to many of us. You know, there's few other examples in the world that we wouldn't turn first and foremost to people who are already doing the thing we want them to do, and try to figure out how they got there, because that's the only route to success. I had one ex-prisoner explain it to me this way. He said, going straight, desisting is like a minefield. And there's only one way to get out of a minefield, and that's to follow in the footsteps of the person in front of you. And if they get out, you follow in their journey. So those journeys, the people who have desisted have a great deal to teach us, the rest of us, in terms of how they did it. And we could learn from those experiences to create our own programs and policies that would try to create, to plow that same pathway for others.
Yeah, in fact, you're gonna be here in online participating in June next in this week of prison innovation organized by Red Coinserta. So you're gonna talk about this, you know, about desistance, about the journey of desistance. Can you talk us about this talk you will do in June?
Yeah,
just a little bit, you know.
Sure, I won't give away the whole punchline. Yeah. In the talk, we think about desistance as a rite of passage. And in that framework, you can see that desistance isn't that dissimilar to all sorts of other rites of passage that people go through in their lives. I'll use a number of examples in the talk, but the one that I'm most familiar with is how somebody becomes an academic. To become an academic, you go on a journey called the PhD program, where you have a mentorship with a senior academic. For a number of years, you carry out your own independent piece of research, and at the end of that, you're given a PhD defense. You have to defend the work that you've done against a panel of other experts. If you're successful with that, you're celebrated with a graduation. You get a piece of paper, a diploma that says you're a PhD, and then you use that diploma to open up new directions for yourself. So this is a typical rite of passage to move from one status, a non-academic, to a new status, how to become an academic. And we can see parallels to exactly that rite of passage when it comes to the process of going from being an offender to being a desister, to rehabilitation. The things like the celebration of change, the certification of change in the form of a piece of paper, and these kind of things are often lacking in various systems. But without these stages, we have an unsuccessful, a difficult, maybe a overly tentative rite of passage. So in the talk, we talk about what the evidence suggests for successful rites of passage and how we could make the desistance journey more like the journey to becoming an academic.
Well, Mr. Chat, times fly. We are here talking about more 15 minutes, so I really appreciate your time. I just want to give you one last minute if there anything that is on your mind that you like to share with Chilean people, or finally thought for our audience before we send them on their way.
Well, I guess if I could add, one last thing, it's that like making the film, I hope our conversation coming up isn't a one-way one where I'm the expert coming from Europe to say here's the way it needs to be done. Desistance is very much a ground-up area of research. So we're interested in learning from different experiences and different cultures and different contexts. And there's no sense of a one size fits all or here's the model and you have to take it or leave it. It's very different in that regard. So I'm looking forward to learning from the attendees as much as I hope the other way around.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chat Maruna. Thank you very much for being with us today from Queen's University, Belfast, Northern Ireland, doing this interview. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bien, ahí estaba entonces el profesor Chat Maruna de la Universidad de Belfast, de Irlanda del Norte. Agradecemos, por supuesto, a todos quienes estuvieron en línea siguiendo este programa y los dejamos, como siempre, invitados a continuar sintonizando este ciclo de conversaciones que estamos realizando con la Red Coinserta. Que estén muy bien.